You're listening to Start Again with Shauna Lee, the place where you will be reminded that it's never too late and you're never too old to do the damn thing. So stick around if you're ready to vibe higher and be inspired to chase your dreams. Hey everyone. Welcome back to another episode. I am introducing you to a new friend today, Amy Singleton. She is the owner of Height Digital Norman. She's also a podcast host herself, and I'm so excited that she has agreed to join us today and tell us all about her Start Again story. Amy, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Shauna. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about beginning again. Oh my goodness.
Yes, all the ways we start again and again and again. Yes.
And
Well,
again.
I am first and foremost very grateful for your flexibility and working through some technical difficulties. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
I think a good way to start is to give a little quick bio, like who you are. Tell us a little bit about your business and your podcast. But specifically, if you can do it in a way that tells us how you've embraced this idea of starting again.
Yeah. So my name is Amy Singleton, and I'm an Oklahoma native. I've been here my entire life, born and raised. And I was a registered nurse before I owned a marketing agency. And that was definitely a challenging transition to make. And there was a large period in between those careers where I was really sick in my body and in my mind in a lot of ways. So starting over was definitely like kind of my only choice. But my podcast, Queen's Lead, is for women in business and in life who are doing amazing things. I feel like we finally got like the seat at the table, but no one had really like passed the microphone to our end of the table yet. And so I wanted to give women a place and a platform where they can come out and tell their stories of overcoming, of triumph, of the amazing ways that they're leading in their lives and their businesses and in their communities. And so that's we're over 100 episodes now and doing great.
I love it. I love it. We definitely have some similarities that we're sharing there. I am all about helping people share their stories. And, a lot of my focus was after divorce. That's what my coaching business is built on. Um,
Yeah.
but maybe, and I
Whew.
know that happens to be a part of your story as well. So maybe tell us a
Oh,
little bit about
yes.
how that played into you starting this business.
Okay. Well, to understand my divorce, you have to understand the marriage. So my first marriage was to my very best friend that I had known since I was 12 years old. We met in the
Wow.
7th grade in junior high, and we're from Oklahoma. We're in the Bible Belt. We're very much a conservative, nice place to live, I guess.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of kept taking those next steps that were natural to take, the things that we'd seen demonstrated in our lives. So we ended up married, and um, after nearly 10 years of marriage and two little boys that were 2 and 6 at the time, I found
Mm,
out that he was gay.
wow.
And that was a really devastating thing to find out about your husband and your best
Sure.
friend and the
Sure.
only man you'd ever been with. And someone who I had my entire identity tied to, because
Yes.
it had just been he and I since we were little kids, like my
Yeah.
entire identity. You didn't speak my name without speaking his, nor vice versa. And so my identity was not only tied to him and our marriage, my identity was also tied to my nursing career at that time. At the time, I was a registered nurse working in the operating room doing open heart surgeries.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, it was a really intense job. It wasn't really even the job I ever wanted, though, Shauna. I wanted
Isn't that
to be
crazy?
a doctor.
Oh,
I wanted to be a doctor, but even I didn't even really want to be that. If I go back to little girl Amy, I was born to be in communication, in
mhm.
speaking, in teaching, in kind of in a performance type connecting of people role. In
Yes.
journalism, newscasting, all the things I'm doing today, these were the
Yes,
things I was
yes.
born for. Those were the things that I had suppressed my entire life or were suppressed by others in me, right?
Yeah.
And so just kind of falling into line. And so I thought, well, where can I take these things? And I ended up with a job at a hospital. And then I was like, oh no, I'm going to be a doctor. But all of those doubts started creeping in, like, who are you to be a doctor? You're just some girl
Yeah.
from Moore, Oklahoma, who's nobody in your family's even been to college. How dare you want to go for 12 years
Yes.
and take that
Yes.
opportunity away from your husband, which is really what was going in my mind because he
Mm.
had some dreams and goals and aspirations um, that I wanted to help foster in him. So I thought, okay, I'll settle for being a nurse. I can get my nursing degree in a lot less time. I had some scholarship money. And so I did that instead of being a doctor. Well, I wanted to be a doctor
Mhm.
instead of being what I really wanted to be, right? So all of these
Yeah,
things,
yeah.
my identity had been tied to him. My identity then was tied to being a nurse. And when I lost that marriage, like it was freaking tough.
Yeah.
I can't even you know, it was a place where I couldn't even tell anybody else because it wasn't my information to share, and he wasn't really ready to share that with the world.
Oh,
He'd only
yes.
shared it with me, and so I even had people asking me, like, if I cheated on him
Oh, yes.
because I was about to undergo gastric bypass surgery. I filed for divorce in May, and then my gastric bypass surgery happened in July,
Oh,
just a
wow.
couple of months later. But that had been planned all this time. So I'd lost about 60 pounds. I was almost 300 pounds at my highest
Yeah,
weight. And
yeah.
so I'd lost about 60 pounds. So people were curious, like, maybe
Oh,
she's
sure.
feeling herself. She's stepping out,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
But none of that, I could say nothing. I was just
Yes.
completely like, I felt so alone. I felt like I was the only woman that had ever been through this, only
Oh,
person
for
this had ever
sure.
happened to. Of course I'm not. I mean, there are
Yes.
thousands of women that are in men that this has happened to,
Yep.
but I felt so
Yep.
alone. And so, after that, after I had the gastric bypass surgery, then I actually broke my back.
Oh my
I got
goodness.
diagnosed with cancer. I had a miscarriage. I had like all of these awful health problems just cascade after that happened.
Yeah, just
Um,
one of those would have been a lot to handle, but to have them one after the
for
other
sure.
all at the same time, that is a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was living with a boyfriend at the time who was the extreme opposite of what my first husband was. This guy was a skin like my first husband was this big, tall, 6'3", bare, hairy beard, gay man, who doesn't quote unquote look gay, like no one would ever know.
Yeah.
And then I went to this skinny redneck welder, hunter, fisherman, like, dude, I don't know what I was thinking. Like, there are photos of me holding a rifle and like holding a deer head. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I was that. But I was seeking approval. I was seeking something different.
Yeah.
But during that process, that because I was hunting with him, I broke my back. And then all of these awful health problems started happening. He lost interest real quick after I couldn't work. And so I found myself living back with my parents in a
Oh my gosh.
wheelchair,
Yes.
could not walk, had daily or weekly multiple doctor's appointments a week. I was on probably 35 different medications to control everything from my pain. And I mean, I was on the strongest doses of Dilaudid imaginable. They also had me on methadone because I was developing such
Wow.
a tolerance to that. I was on Flexeril. I was on muscle relaxers. I was on mood stabilizers, antidepressants,
Oh my
antipsychotics. I
goodness.
was on steroids for lupus, which I ended up getting diagnosed with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis throughout this process. And I mean, I had a couple of mental breakdowns. Like they locked me up. It was crazy. And I
Yeah, yeah,
knew as a
yeah.
nurse that like all of that was so bad for me. So I stopped cold turkey. I do not recommend anyone do that. I
Wow.
stopped
Yeah.
everything I was taking,
Wow.
including chemotherapy, including like
Oh my
IV
goodness.
infusions for the lupus. I stopped it all. I was so sick. I should have died. I'm lucky to be alive. I'm blessed to be alive. But the pain was still there emotionally and physically. So I
Mhm.
grabbed a bottle. Like,
Mhm.
what else? This is legal. It's quote unquote safe. It's available. It's socially acceptable. All of these things. And so I
Yep.
found myself completely spiraled out in a total depressive, drunken haze that I just couldn't
Mhm.
even want to, Shauna. I had moved
Mhm.
out from my parents' house and I was back living on my own and I was so depressed I couldn't move. I wasn't taking care of myself. I just
Yep.
couldn't find who I was. And so there was a break between the nursing and the marketing. Obviously, there was like a time period of several years where I just had to figure myself out and get myself back
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. What do you think surprised you most about that journey from that hot mess that you were to where you are today?
Um Man, what surprised me most was just that it was within me all along. and I was searching for answers outside of me and outside of God, and that just wasn't the place to search,
Yeah.
and he was there all along, and I was there all along, and it was
Yeah.
always within me, but I was laying on my couch just trying to figure out every way to not be depressed. Well,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
you can't do that, like, you can't go from depressed to not depressed. It takes
Yeah.
tiny, tiny steps, and I mean to tell
Oh,
you,
I'm
those
so
tiny
glad you said
steps.
that. I'm so glad you said
Oh,
that.
well, the tiny step for me, Shauna, I'm not kidding you, was just to the kitchen to make myself a piece of toast to feed my body. It
Yes.
was a step to my bathroom to wash my face and brush my teeth
Yeah.
that I hadn't done in 2 or 3 days. It was a step to the mailbox to check the mail that hadn't been checked in 5 days.
Yep. Yeah.
And those were the steps it took, and those are the things that people don't tell you.
No.
Like, when you're in the depths of depression,
Yes.
people it's so you feel so alone because your house is a disaster. There are things piled up
Yep.
everywhere. Your external is reflective of what you're feeling inside, and so there's
100%.
so much shame
Yes.
wrapped up in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And like one of the freebies I created was this checklist for how to army crawl your way out of depression. Because to me, it was
Oh,
an army crawl. It was one
yes,
tiny
yes,
movement in
yes.
the direction you wanted to go.
Mhm.
And me coming out of depression, like in the depths of it, I literally just went and sat in the sun. I pulled a chair out into the middle of my yard and I just sat there because
Yeah,
I heard somewhere that the
yeah.
sun would help. And so I was like, I don't have the energy to
Mhm.
walk around the block. I don't have the wherewithal to
Yep.
do anything. So I'm just going to sit here. And
Mhm.
I think I was beyond crying at that point. Like I was just numb.
Yeah.
But one of the
Yeah.
things I heard about depression that really hit home for me was that it's not a happiness issue. It's not that you're missing joy.
No.
It's a connection issue. You're disconnected from what matters most.
Yes.
And you said both of those things. It's a disconnection from yourself
Yeah.
and what is it within ourselves, which I think is God, the divine. And a lot of times it's
Right.
being disconnected from people because we feel so alone.
People that was the other piece. When you're depressed, I had I had disconnected myself from
Yep.
every person in my life,
Yep.
from my parents, from my sister, from my neighbors, from anybody. Like, I wasn't working, so I didn't have that. I wasn't a business owner, so I didn't have,
Yep.
networking friends or contacts. I wasn't even posting on Facebook. I wasn't doing anything. I was
Yep.
just completely alone.
Yep.
And so when people ask me, like, if you can tell me how you left your depression in one sentence, which is impossible, what I say is what it took was movement and connection to people. Those
100%.
are the two things that it took. I had to move my butt, like, off
Yep.
that couch, out of
Yep.
that bed, wherever,
Yeah.
and just move, like you said, even if it's just to a chair in the sun,
Yeah. And
wherever it is, you have to move.
there's two things for me in that movement that become important because that's why you always hear people say go take a walk if you're depressed. Like that's one of the things they always tell
Yeah.
people. And it's something about being outside in the sun and all that. But physically move body is the way that our bodies release that energy. That stagnant, negative
Yeah.
energy has to have a way out. And so movement, physical movement gives you that ability. But I also think there's this subliminal aspect to it because we're telling ourselves, okay, I'm moving to this next place. I feel like shit. I don't want to feel this way. I'm going to move somewhere else. And so it starts that
Yeah.
momentum, I think, emotionally and mentally, which is
Mhm.
really important. But man, I didn't even know we were going to talk
Yeah.
about
Well, you
depression. That
nailed
was
it.
good.
You I know, you nailed it, though. I mean, it starts with a decision, right? You have to make a decision
Yes.
to go outside. You have to make a decision to grab that chair. And I think whenever people, like, take a walk, it's really easy for people who are not depressed to say, "Go take a walk." And you're like,
Yes.
"I'm just trying to put on a pair of pants so
Yes.
I can then put on a pair of shoes so
Yes.
I can get the bravery to walk to my front door and open it."
Yep.
That's 3 more steps, and there's 10 more that it takes to get to that walk,
Yeah.
and someone who's not been there does not understand that.
Yeah. 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 It's so
So
true. It's so true. And so I was talking to someone recently who was in the muck of it and I just reminded her of all those same things, like you just have
Mhm.
to do the one tiny thing, set a small goal
Yeah.
because there's this dopamine hit for when we reach a goal, right? So
Yeah.
maybe today it is just put on your pants. maybe you're just getting dressed or the
Yeah.
shower is the goal. And then tomorrow you take the
Yeah.
walk. Like if it's going to take 3 steps to
Yeah.
get your ass out the door, then maybe we
Yeah.
just take the step 1
That's
today
right.
and tomorrow we take 2 steps. But I
That's
have
right.
this course that I teach and there's this body, mind, spirit element of kind of who we are. And when we have 3 of these together, that's where we get the most fulfilled version of ourselves. But the body piece, I
Mhm.
boiled it down to move your ass or move your shit. And it really is that simple. Like, you just have to physically move your
Yeah.
body and you have to sometimes clear the space in your house. You talk about how your house was a
Yes.
mess.
Yes.
But I mean, shit, if you're
100%.
depressed, you don't have the wherewithal to clean up your house. But moving and
Mm.
clearing your physical space is a really good way to clean up the cobwebs of our minds as well.
Yeah. And that can come in steps too. I know I heard, of course, I'm a huge Mel Robbins fan. I heard
Mhm.
someone on her podcast say the other day, like, a depressed person is not going to save the rainforest.
Nope.
So do things like use paper plates. Like if you have a person in your life, like Shauna just said, is in the muck of it, one of the most beautiful things you can do is go by their house and drop off a big old package of Sam's or Costco paper plates and like knives, forks, and spoons. Just
Yes.
drop that off at their house on their porch because they're not going to save the rainforest. I remember a time
Yeah.
when my sink was so full of things.
Yes.
I was so embarrassed to even have someone come in. And the person on the podcast, I'm sure she was a psychologist, said, run the dishwasher 5 times. Screw the rules. Like, if those dishes are so much for you to look at,
Yeah.
load 2 dishes a day for all week, and then you run that dishwasher, and if it takes 6 times to run that dishwasher to get
Yes.
those things clean, do that. You
Yeah.
don't have to follow the rules of what everyone else is doing.
Oh
Use
my
the
God.
paper plate,
Yes.
run the dishwasher, do what you have to
Yes.
do to make it to that tiny next step. I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah. I always,
This is a business podcast or whatever, but, like, I feel like so many of entrepreneurs and business owners deal with this and we don't say anything
yes.
because we are the pillars of our community. We are the pillars of our family. We are the pillars of the business. Everyone's looking to us.
Yes.
And I have a friend that just sold his company for multi-million dollars, like over $100 million, sold this software company, and he is back in school to be a licensed professional counselor and a therapist
Mhm.
because of so many of his entrepreneur friends are dealing with depression and
Yes.
suicidality
Yes.
and these awful, awful things that we just don't talk about enough in business.
Yeah, no, we don't. And it comes down to the connection issue, I think, for most people, because our world is
Mhm.
built around, we're all on our phones. My son-in-law, his favorite thing to say is when he'll look around the room and everybody's looking at their phone, he's like, "Wow, we're all so connected." And it's his
Yeah.
ha-ha joke, but also
Yeah.
it's so true that we
Mhm.
are on these devices, which lend us to believe we're being more connected to humanity, but it's doing the opposite. What advice would you give the younger you, knowing everything that you know now?
Love you. Love you. I hated me.
Yeah.
I hated me as a child. There was some point, I don't know what age it was, probably between 10 and 12, 8 and 8 and 9, 10, 12, something like that, that the joy and the childlikeness and I all of a sudden started seeing other people watching me and looking at me, and
Yeah.
that's like when I lost my spark and my shine, and it took me till I was dang near 40 to get it back. And so, just loving me, giving myself permission to be me,
Yes.
leaning into the things that I loved and enjoyed and was good at. I heard someone recently say, "What did your grandmother think about you? What
No.
did your favorite grandma think you were good at?" And it was, I'm trying not to cry. It was like
Well,
a couple of days before I was about to appear on my first newscast. I got the chance to appear on a news station last Friday, and they're playing for the next few Fridays. But my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, who died right after I graduated high school, she wanted me to be a journalist. She just knew I was going to report the news,
yes.
And I just every time I watch Anchorman, I think like, oh man, that
Ah,
could have been me being so silly. But, like, and the host was like, "Your grandmother's wish is coming true, and you're so good at this, and you're a natural." And I was
oh,
like, "Gosh," there's this video of me on my parents gave me the most beautiful gift, my sister and I. They went through all of our old VHS tapes
Oh my
and all of
goodness.
the even the little tapes that were still
Yes.
hadn't been moved from the camcorder
Yes.
to the
Yes.
VHS, and they put them on a flash drive. And there's a video on this flash drive of me in the gifted and talented program. I think it was the fourth grade, fourth or fifth grade. And we were reporting the news, and I'd forgotten all about that. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, and I remember my grandmother was so proud of that. But loving yourself, for me, it was going back to who I was at my core. Who was I born to be before the world wrecked me with their ideas and
Yep.
their limitations, and
Yep.
before I was taught to sit down and shut up and stay in line in school when I wanted to be the leader of that line every single time without fail.
Yes.
I was a born leader. I wanted to be out front, but I just couldn't do it whenever I let the world take over my joy and my spark.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think my kids are always giving me a hard time about me being old. And I've gotten to the point where I'm kind of living this zero fucks given theme of my life, right? Like
Oh yeah,
we get to the
we are in
point.
our feral era, right?
Yes. Yes, like we get to this point and it's like quote unquote old age, where we just don't give a fuck anymore. And what happens
That's
is
right.
we get a whole lot happier. And so it's a lot of
Yes.
the unlearning what we were taught to believe
Mhm.
about ourselves that is allowing us
Yeah.
to be like, okay, I'm going to call bullshit on the recipe you gave me to live my life. And I'm going to do what I want to
Mhm.
do, what actually makes me happy. And it's just this whole full circle moment where we're coming back to, being playful, fun, child in us
100%.
versions of ourselves again.
Um, Sally Field recently was on Julia Louis-Dreyfus's podcast, which is amazing if you have it. She interviews older women, like women over 70. She
I
has
love it.
interviewed Jane Fonda and just loads of amazing women. But
Yes.
Sally Field said, it's like an unknitting of our sweater. It's like we've
Mhm.
been knitting the sweater around ourselves for our entire childhood, and we just have to start unraveling it. And when you get to a certain age,
Yes.
like their like second or third act of your life, as this actress was saying, she's like, you just have to unknit that sweater and put on what you want to wear. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, yes.
Yes. So
But don't feel bad because your kids are calling you old, because I texted all of my kids, and the oldest one is 30 and the youngest one is 15 and a half this morning. And I texted them, TBU today, or TBU this morning. Love you so much, son or daughter, whatever they were. And with a heart. Every one of them, all five, came back and said, what's TBU? And I was like, listen, this is AOL Instant Messenger. BRB, thinking about you. It's thinking about you. I'm sorry I'm not with the Riz or whatever the dope thing is today, kiddos. But
yes.
they didn't know what TBU was. And I'm
Yes.
like, thinking about you? Is that like, doesn't everybody know TBU? No, I'm
No.
old. It's fine.
Yes. No, it's stuff like that. But they're
What are
always
you going to
like,
do? What are you
Mom,
going to do?
don't
That's
say
right.
it. My youngest, she's 11, and she'll be like, Mom, don't say that. It just sounds weird when you say it. And I'm like, okay, note to self, I'm going to say it more.
Our 9-year-old granddaughter told my husband the other day, he had taken her ice skating and like for ice cream. And she was like, Papa, you're so cringe.
Oh, I hate
She's
that word.
9.
Yes.
Like, what? Oh,
Yes.
you're so cringe. I
You're
don't
so
remember. He was
cringe.
like, well, I don't know what he did. He said something to another kid. She's like, oh, that's so cringe, Papa. I'm like, oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our give a damn's busted. So it's a good thing. I don't care
It
anymore.
is. It
Like you
is.
said.
I love it. And I feel
That's
like
right.
I'm on a mission to teach my daughter, the youngest one, to not give a damn from the beginning. Like this is our daily conversation
Yes.
because I'm like, listen,
Yes.
you can sit and observe and notice that these adults that you're calling old are happy because they don't care about what people think anymore. And so if we can just like, I'm like, if we can just get you to the point where you don't care what other people say, you're going to be happier.
Yeah.
And the rest of your life will be so much
That's
easier
right.
because you just won't care.
Yeah.
But listen, it's
That's
a hard
right.
lesson. It's a hard lesson, I tell you.
It
Well,
is.
so
Each of us have to learn it on our own, I think.
I know. I know. So and I just recorded a solo episode where I was saying how our kids pay attention to what we do more than what we say, which is so true. So the
Oh,
more I
yes.
can embody that, that's what they'll pay attention to, less than me saying,
That's it.
this is what you should do. Um,
100%. You're
Well,
so right.
so when you look forward and you think about what's next for you and where you go from here, what do you now believe is possible for your own life?
Wow. That is such a loaded question.
I know.
You know, I truly believe that anything is possible in my life at this moment. I'm so blessed to have recently I've been in a tag game with the Lord since I was about 5 years old.
Um,
Um in really deep and like as far away as we could possibly get. And I have to say, Jesus tagged me again back in the game this past summer about a year ago. And I have never felt more connected to myself and to the divine and to the eternal. And so I truly know that anything is possible. And sharing that love with other people, there are so many hurting people in this world. And
yeah.
I did not understand the love that he had for me because I was looking at it through a lens that other people were trying to show me.
Yep.
And they can't show me that. Only he could show me that.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't mean to get all, like, emotional, but, like, it really business ownership is entrepreneurship is such a spiritual journey.
It
I
is.
wish someone had warned me that
Yeah.
5 or
Yeah.
6 years ago when we started. I had no idea.
Yeah.
But so, like, in business, I think, I'm so excited to be leaning into we're publishing a local magazine here, in town and a resource
Oh, I love it.
for our community. And so we have like a Facebook group and it's called We're Local, WHIR local.io. And it's basically we're becoming the next Yelp. Some friends of ours started this up in Salem, Oregon. And now we're publishing neighborhoods all across the United States. And so we have a neighborhood right here in the South Oklahoma City metro area, which is the South Oklahoma City, Moore and Norman, just a little kind of community of three towns that are right real close together.
Mhm.
And so I'm really excited to be pushing kind of back to the roots of what we wanted when we started our business, which was helping the small guy, like the business owner that like didn't have even a website, didn't have anything. But as our marketing agency grew, like costs increase and
Yep.
SEO is expensive
Yep.
and PPC and paid ads are
Yep.
expensive. And so of course we still serve all of those things, but we're getting back to those roots of helping the small guy. We have free tools and then we have a super affordable, like less than $300 a month tool that are actually helpful for business owners that get them in front of this hyper local community that want to do business with them. Like people don't want to have to go to Walmart,
Mm.
but they don't know where else to get their things,
Right.
right? Or they don't want to have to call the national brand. They want to call someone in their community.
Yeah.
But one, it's hard to know who to trust that's really licensed and insured and all of these things. Like, who can I really trust? And the other thing is that the ones that are licensed and insured, they don't always have the budget to get in front of their community. So I've kind of created this ecosystem where the community wins and the business owner wins, for free or for really low cost. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited about that. Even on my podcast, I'm leaning into. I've had over 100 episodes of women all over the world, international guests all across the United States, everywhere, I think almost from every country, but not every country, like every continent anyway, but we're bringing it back to local. I've got like 20 women from Oklahoma City area like lined up to be on the podcast
Oh, I
because
love it. Yeah.
I just am leaning so much into this local community piece that I feel like has been missing. Like you said, our
Yeah.
connections are off because of
Exactly.
social media. And I know that it's not going anywhere. So I'm trying to use the power of that social media to bring back a positive, encouraging local community group because I don't know how they are where you live, but some of these groups are kind of toxic. Like there's a lot of hating and meanness and just, smack talking. And so we're trying to bring something different to our community and really serve people.
Well, and I think this is what differentiates businesses that make it and those that don't is the ability to pivot and recognize what's happening
Yeah.
in the world or in your local community,
Hmm.
and pivot to meet that need. And I think what you're doing is just that, because I think one of the things that
Yeah.
came out of COVID again was this disconnected from our people being forced to be in
Yeah.
our homes, not going out to work in public, and it brought a lot of flexibility and good things to our world, but I think it also brought this really big hole of disconnection. And so I think that's why we're seeing a lot of people wanting
Hmm.
to meet in person again and create those small groups that used to be how we had our sense of community, right? Think our parents'
Right.
age
Yeah.
where that generation where they were doing, bowling leagues and things like this. Like they had built in these,
Oh my god, you took the words
right?
right out of my mouth. My parents were in a bowling league.
Yes.
I was in a bowling league
Yes.
when I was little, like, that's what they did, for real.
But
So
it
funny.
met
I
a
love that you
need
said that.
for connection, and so I love that that's what you're doing.
Yes,
And you're
yes,
right, as small business
yes.
owners especially, it's such a lonely journey to do this whole entrepreneur life because you're not at a big company where things you've got this community built in, you have to find it and cultivate it and build it yourself. Anyways, I love
Yeah,
that that is where you're headed.
you
That
do.
is amazing.
Yes, thank you. We're excited about it.
Yeah. Well, so I guess my last question is typically the most important question. How can people find you?
How can they find me? So amysingleton.net. All of my socials are there, the business website, my podcast, everything is linked at amysingleton.net.
Fabulous. Well, I will be sure that and all the other
Yeah.
direct links are in the show notes. But thank you so much for coming back again and recording with me. I was so happy to speak with you today.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. And I would love to invite anybody that lands there on amysingleton.net. There's a form at the bottom. If you're wondering about how your website's doing, like, is it showing up? What can I do better? I'd love for you to just enter your information there. Give me your URL. I'll have my team go out and film you a quick video, like a screen record video, just a few minutes showing you what you can do better. Like move this button here, add this word, add this picture, do this stuff to help you make your website just a little bit better. I'd be happy to give that to you.
That's awesome. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you again.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Hey, one last thing before you go. Don't forget to grab your free guide to get your next chapter started today. Let's make this pipe dream of yours this year's reality. Pop on over to shaunalee.com/startagain to grab your free guide.